Amazon is 75 times bigger than they were 20 years ago in terms of like revenue. 75 times, 75x. What is their annual growth rate? What is their compound annual growth rate over those 20 years?
I think it's a trick question.
It's got to be 30%, 25,
Okay,
30%.
great. So Battier is no fun to do these things with because he like knows the root of the question. First instinct is like, oh man, they must be growing at 80% a year like forever, right? But getting a little better every year really goes crazy. And we do tend to underestimate compounding. Alex, so when you said that you wanted to talk about aging, my brain went to like multiple places. You know, one, I felt pretty old because I'm like, man, how old are we that we're talking about aging as a topic on our podcast? But really what I went to is I was like, there's like professional aging, there's personal aging, and then there's like parental aging, you know, and then there's even like, you know, our parents getting older to the extent they're still around. And so I don't know. I think all of those are like interesting to talk about, but I wasn't sure which one you thought was most interesting.
Well, I mean, I think aging's
obviously Ravi has not had his first colonoscopy yet. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
This is, you know, this is when you brought this up, Ravi. This is my first thought. Like, you've not had a colonoscopy.
That's true. It's
and
true.
So when you are of an age to get a colonoscopy, you find your friend groups get together and health becomes a much more larger part of the discussion. So that's where I went. I went colonoscopy first. I had my first one last year. So Alex, I want to hear where you went with this.
He also has not had his first colonoscopy, but, you know, maybe that's where he was going. You know, who knows? While you're processing, Alex, just for a second, Shane, I did notice, you know, just to your point, one, fantasy football weekend at the breakfast, there was like a lot of discussion all of a sudden on like labs, you know, and like, this is where my, you know, my blood sugar is, or this is where my, you know, cholesterol is. Like, I have been very bad about this, but I haven't had a physical in 4 years. So I just had my physical. Okay. And I went and took it, and all of a sudden they took my labs, and dude, like, to this exact point, this is something I hadn't thought about at all. And then all of a sudden, when I was waiting for them, which, like, God, thank God, everything was cool. But like, I was pretty worried. I was like, fuck, I'm 44 and I like haven't looked at this in a while. Like, who knows what's going to come back? I actually need to like pay attention to this. You know, my uncle had a heart attack at 43, you know, like that's younger than I am now. And so there was like all these things, all jokes aside, that I was started thinking about of like, it's almost like you can't just be flippant about it anymore. Age just like matters. But Alex, now you've had a little time to think about what your prompt was for.
Really thinking about it from a professional setting.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of crossover in industry, and a lot of industries, especially yours, Ravi. But like in sports and athletics, universally, it is a young guy's sport, young man's sport, young person's sport, right? Like, there's this excitement, there's this energy in the unknown, in the potential, right? And as you get older, you become locked in to whatever narrative is around you, right? Like, and what you are, and you are a finished product, and you do have these limitations, you know, whether you come to grips with it, accept it, fight against it. But especially in sports, as you grow older and you become, you know, very quickly become the older guy, the veteran, you know, living here, literally like half a mile from Sand Hill Road, like there's this same phenomena in tech, right? Like, it is, you know, it is a young person's game. And I think dealing with this as you get older, right? And you're in your profession, no different, right? Like, are you the young, right? Like, appealing, in the know, exciting investor. And it was no different in sports, I think, as you're playing. And then even for me now, right? Like, as I do TV and talk about this, like, there is a relevance, but like, you do see these older quarterbacks that like, I'm following down this path, and these guys are on TV talking about football that, and is like, has it passed them by? You know, like, do they even know? Do they even know current football? Because I have this attitude towards them as I listen, and I'm, you know, and am I just going to be that same person? And so obviously there's a lot of facets to this.
Shane, what do you think?
Well, as Alex was talking, I kind of laugh. For me, professionally, I was always the old guy. I never had upside baked into my career. Okay. No, it's true. It's true. I've always been like super mature. So even when I was a freshman, people don't look at me as a freshman. They look at me as this really like psycho 14-year-old that like was like always in the gym. Okay. I get to Duke. All right. I wasn't this young guy with amazing upside. I was a pretty good high school player. I don't know how much better Batty is going to get. Said everybody. No one thought I had upside. All right. I get to the NBA. Okay. So I get drafted in 2001, and I will never forget. I was in a draft with a bunch of high schoolers and freshmen. So, uh, Tyson Chandler, second pick, Kwame Brown, first pick, Eddie Curry was the fourth pick, Jason Richardson, fifth pick. I was a sixth pick. And so I'm like surrounded by all these high school guys. And the narrative on me was like, I have no upside compared to these high school kids. And so this is like coming after National Player of the Year and Final Fours and like all the things I accomplished in college. And it was like, yeah, that was cute, but like you don't have growth here. Right. And so literally I was calling GMs on my draft day. I called Gary St. Jean at the Warriors. I called Pete Babcock at the Atlanta with the third pick. And I said, guys, I know they're enticing high school players, but I have not reached my peak yet.
You're calling them yourself. Literally,
yes,
you, not your agent.
I called them on draft day. And my agent's like, yeah, it might be a good idea. So I'm like, hell yeah, this is real money. This is my money I'm talking about. I may as well be an advocate for it. And so I'll never forget that. And I'm just like, guys, I'm 23 years old. I'm not 35. Like, I'm going to get better. And so I had to laugh when you were talking about professional age, Alex. I was always old. I never had the benefit of upside in anything because I was so mature. And then, sure enough, like, when I was really old, they said, "Oh, you're finally really, really old." But it's funny though. But it's so true. It's about what could be, and the allure of potential in any industry. Like what could be, and we're so focused on what's next, who's hot, what could be, and not necessarily what is right now. It's what could be, and trying to identify that. There's this kind of like a game that everyone plays. That I saw that person. I knew them before they were going to hit it. That makes sense.
Shane, it's that story of you calling the GMs is crazy, right? Like I'm just envisioning you like on the phone with somebody. You've won the National Player of the Year, winningest player in college basketball history, like kind of singing for your supper. Draft me, choose me, like, and these guys, it's not to knock any of these players, but like, some of those players didn't turn out to have amazing careers, right? Whatever the upside was.
Yeah, some did.
Some did, but it's like a hard bet to make. And so, Alex, when you were talking, man, I have so many thoughts that go through my head. One is, when I first started working, there was a guy I used to work with named Dean Nelson. And I still remember the like disdain. He was my age now when I started working with him, right? But like at the time I was 21, 22, 23 or something. I still remember the disdain with which he would use this word of like, oh, that guy's just a pontificator. And I never heard the word pontificate before, but he was so dismissive and so disdainful of like someone who's a pontificator. And what you learned was like, that was somebody who like didn't have a lot of recent substance, but was just chatting, just talking and telling stories from 20 years ago. And, like, and stuff that's not as relevant. And it's exactly what you're saying about like the people that you don't love of like, has the game passed them by, but they're just talking. And so it's so funny, like the things that influence you. I just remember being like, I never want to be referred to as like a pontificator, like, and so that was like one thing that was going through my head of like influences. The second thing is, I think that the natural order of things is that you become irrelevant, right? The natural order is that you don't learn new things and you keep on going back to the same old thing, right? And then things pass you by, right? And in my industry, I mean, that is for sure the norm, like if you're talking about like the transition to mobile right now, like people are just like, oh my God, this old fuck, you like nobody cares, right? So the function in my world, I think, is just like, are you willing to learn the new thing or not? Right. And it's hard. It's hard to learn a new thing. It's hard to do it. It's hard to take your old dog. You got to teach a new trick. But like, if you don't, your irrelevance comes pretty quick. And so I think maybe one difference in my profession versus yours is like, you can continue to play for longer And if you want to play for longer, you have to go and learn the new thing, in order to do that, because the natural order of things is that you will like decay.
That's crazy, because when did the smartphone come out? I mean, this is less than 20 years ago, right?
Oh, easy. The
Like
iPhone
in
came
some
out like
ways, this
2008.
is even faster than sports, right? Like,
Yeah, totally. I mean, like,
innovation hasn't happened like, I mean, in sports and basketball and football, like schemes change and evolve, but like it's not that fast, right? Like, Shane, do you think you were always thought of as the old guy? And I was just thinking about this. Does this go back to the Michael Lewis no stat all-stars? Like, people never fully could see your value, right? Like, it wasn't as like, this is kind of like the Jalen Hurts thing right now, I think, in the NFL, is that people can't figure out like what makes him so valuable. It's not, he doesn't have the consistently throwing for 350 yards. Like, he's not putting up huge points, like, to take it to a basketball standpoint, right? Like the things that like people are used to looking at, right? Like points, assists, rebounds. And that your style was different and your value was different. People then, right? Like, so all of a sudden it comes out as like, well, is it a low ceiling, right? I don't know.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's something about reliability that makes you less sexy, right? And every manager is like, gosh, I just wish I had someone who I knew what they're going to do every single day when they show up. But the irony is, when you get that, you say, man, I wish I had someone who had a little more spiky talent, right? And, maybe could give me a little more upside, right? So people are paradoxical or hypocritical. And I think Jalen Hurts is the perfect example. He's a winner. He just wins.
Yeah.
He just wins. And because he doesn't throw for 250 yards and they still win, people say, yeah, but he didn't throw for 250 wins. Dude, it's the W. It's the W. It's just reliability. I fought that my entire career, and I didn't fret over it. And I knew people looked at me in a certain way. And
when you were young, when was the point when you were just like, I don't get, or did you never care?
I was never the pretty girl, right? I was never the belle of the ball. I was never the pretty girl that people wanted to ask to prom. All right. I was the guy that,
look at you now.
I was the guy you wanted to marry, not date. Right. As a basketball player.
Yeah.
Right? Is that fair? That's okay. I mean,
that is. But when you're young,
fine.
did it sting more when you were young? I mean, I would imagine
a little bit. You want to be hot. You want to be cool. You want to be swaggy. I never had that. And at some point, at a very early age, I gave up swag for the much cooler people. And I just wanted to win, stay around. It was more important to just stay in the game. And the things that I did, all the intangibles, all the glue guy stuff that, I did for 30 years and people didn't appreciate besides until Michael Lewis came around. It was more important to just, be on the floor and be a great teammate. But, I was always old, always old.
Yeah. This so does remind me. I mean, I kind of threw it out there right now as I was thinking about it, but like the Jalen Hurts is the same thing. Like this guy, like in press conferences, he's like quoting World War II generals, right? Like he is such an old soul, right? He's like so stoic. And I do think it's so different from his peers, right? Like the Josh Allen, Patrick Lamar, who are just like, I mean, the most thrilling, exciting, players, and they have these splash plays and wow plays. And it's different.
Yeah. Well, what's bullshit about it is the second a guy like Jalen Hurts, and I live this, doesn't do something, everyone's quick to say, aha,
totally,
I see it. Like that's why he's not a dude. Forget the body of work that he's put in and the Super Bowl that he's competed for every single year, right? The second you have a little failure and you don't pass the eye test, people are like, I knew it. I knew you're not special, and, juxtapose that to Lamar, who's like, guys, out of this world, but he gets a little bit more of a pass, but they hold him to maybe a little higher expectation too. When he does fail, there's much more vitriol versus when Hurts fail. But when a guy like Hurts fails, everyone is quick to say, aha, I knew it. I knew he didn't have it.
Amazon is 75 times bigger than they were 20 years ago in terms of like revenue. 75 times, 75x.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is their annual growth rate? What is their compound annual growth rate over those 20 years? So they're 75 times bigger. Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of revenue.
Yeah.
So if they had 2 billion of revenue, they have 150 billion of revenue. Like,
yeah,
they are so much bigger. 20 years. Okay. What do you think their compound annual growth rate is over that time period?
I think it's a trick question, and this is like the effects of compound interest. So I'm going to say 3%.
What's their growth rate? You're asking me over like
what
average
growth rate gets
average
you
over the. No, I got to be higher. It's got to be 30%, 25.
Okay, great. So Battier is no fun to do these things with because he like knows the root of the question, but it's like 20 to 25%. Okay, 20 to 25%. But the point is, if I told you somebody's 75 times bigger than they were 20 years ago, the first instinct is like, oh man, they must be growing at 80% a year like forever, right? But getting a little better every year really goes crazy. And we do tend to underestimate compounding. You know what I'm saying? And I think the thing that's interesting on you, Shane, if you think about it, is sort of like the thing people misunderstood was it's like whatever your rate of growth was, there was growth every year because you wanted to win. Just like you have to get better every year. And I think the same thing for you, Alex, which is like, look, ultimately at some point you're sort of like, I have to keep winning. And one of the things that you talked about last week was just like this point of like your mechanics continuously getting better, even though you're already a really good NFL quarterback, but you're still working on the mechanics. Like that is the compounding. That is the like, you know what, I'm gonna just keep going. There's this thing called the rule of 72. Okay. Rule of 72, which is basically like take whatever percentage growth rate you have. Okay. And take 72 divided by that number. And that's how quickly it doubles. So if you grow at 3%, it takes you 24 years to double. But if you grow at 8%, it only takes you 9 years to double, right? And if you grow at 12%, it only takes you 6 years to double. But you don't need actually all that much different for you to double way, way, way quicker. So just take 12% versus 3%, okay? If you grow at 12%, you double every 6 years. If you grow at 3%, you double once every 24 years, right? So in 24 years, growing at 3%, you've doubled once. If you grow at 12%, you double every 6 years, you've doubled 4 times, right? Over that same 24-year period. 2 to the 4th is 16. So you are 16 times bigger if you grow at 12%, right? Versus if you grow at 3% and you only are 2 times bigger. Do you see what I'm saying? So think about like how different it is to grow at 12% versus 3. But to your guys' point, oftentimes we're looking for like, is it growing at 100? Is it growing at 80? Is it, how fast is it growing? How fast is it growing? What you're really trying to figure out is how long will it grow? Like the companies that got big, it's not that they grew at 100% the longest. It's that they grew at 20 or 30% the longest. You look at any one of these companies, Meta, Amazon, any of them. The thing that's unique is how long they grew at 20 or 30, not how long they grew at 100. And I think that same thing is true at people. The problem is sometimes people stop growing or they go negative because they just don't get any new knowledge, right? And they just keep extracting from the old. So to me, so much of what I think about is like, how can you just keep growing some? Even 10 or 12%, like for yourself. And I think that's like a huge deal, just the continuous growing. Sorry for the rant.
No,
just
100%.
Ravi just flexed on us right there.
Little math. Little math.
That was
boardroom,
a lot of math.
Investor flex, investment committee flex right there.
But you know what I'm saying?
A lot of math.
No, I a ton. And again, like I guess I have multiple thoughts, and not to turn this into the Jalen Hurts episode. But this is a guy that was perceived to not be able to throw the football at the University of Alabama. Like, could not throw the football, benched for Tua, like just completely cast off. And I think at that point, that narrative that people had put on him, right? He's basically this running back playing quarterback. And then just that I think he's such a perfect example of this. Has just been steady improvement. He decides to go to Oklahoma, right? He knows they throw the ball. It's a great place for him to develop those skills. He wins the Heisman, right? He's still, even when he gets drafted, he's still not really thought of as this kind of as a real. I don't think like a pocket quarterback, right? And he's just like continue to work on this craft.
And he'll never be known as that, right, Alex?
No,
he'll never get the credit. He'll never get it.
you watch him and this guy, I mean,
No,
like,
I know. We agree. He's a baller.
Yeah.
I love him. He's awesome. But he, like, the Gen Pop will never give him his flowers for being, to Peyton Manning, right?
Yep.
Never.
No.
Do you
But
think
he's
the Philly
so
fans
fundamentally sound now
do the
as a
Philly
passer.
fans give him? Because I take your point on general population. Is there anybody who sees it up close and knows what they're seeing? Then does anyone appreciate Jalen Hurts?
Oh, very few, I think, really know how to understand his value. I think.
Alex, here's a question.
They see him as a product of an amazing roster. I think they see the tush push. He just is a guy that benches, he squats 700 pounds, right? He's got
Okay,
a great
question.
defense.
Like, do the real football minds appreciate Jalen Hurts? Like, that's what I'm trying to understand. Like, Shane, to me, I've always envisioned that there are some people, right, in basketball, like the real basketball minds are like, dude, I would fucking take Batty 8 all day. Don't give me this stat. I don't care. In football, Alex, like, does Tom Brady appreciate Jalen Hurts? Like, I'm talking like real. Does Peyton Manning appreciate Jalen Hurts? Like, do people like that? Is it sort of like an indicator of your football knowledge how much you appreciate Jalen Hurts? Is that like a real thing?
My guess is those apps, without a doubt, those guys see the value that he has.
Okay, so that's
And
interesting.
just how different it is. And it just because he's not at the line of scrimmage, audibling to plays all the time. They don't throw it 45 times a game, right? That this guy still, if you take his value, I mean, he is an elite decision maker. Like, you think about that. I mean, you have the ball in your hands every play. And first off, this is what's really unique about him. The run game, the Philadelphia run game, right? And Saquon going for 2,000 yards, it runs through Jalen Hurts. They RPO more than anybody in football. And I don't even mean just RPO. They also go run to run. He makes a decision or is reading somebody on virtually every single play. They rarely get under center and Jalen turns and hands off. Now, they do it a little bit, but for the most part, he drives the run game. He's making a decision. He's, again, whether it's a check, a read, a linebacker, a defensive end, he's reading somebody on every single play. And so when Saquon's getting these very open looks in the run game, it's because he's accounted for somebody, and sometimes two people, if that makes sense, right? Like, his value there, you could not do that with a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady, right? Like, in the run game. They're all of a sudden now an anchor in the run game, whereas Jalen is this huge value. And I'm not even talking about once he's decided to pull the ball and run, in which at that point, I do think he leads the NFL in third down convert. Like, if you take about, first down conversions, goal to go situations, obviously tush push a part of this. This guy's greatly leads the NFL. And these are critical situations in football that he comes through. And then I think his ability to throw the football. You make a decision on every play as a quarterback, and to have maybe the best decision maker in the game doing that, you compound that over time, right? How many times do we see him make a critical error, right? Like, it just, it virtually never happens. Him making a critical error.
I like the word compounding, and Ravi, you said it well. Humans are good at addition, horrible at multiplication, right? And no, it is true. Yeah. It's true. And that's probably the problem with this behavior and little additive things that you do, whether it's, going for a walk every time you have a meal, right? Or
totally
taking the stairs instead of taking the elevator, right? We look at that as, well, I just took the stairs today. It doesn't make a big difference on my health. But you do that like 4 to 5 days, you do that for, weeks on end. It's not additive. It is exponential growth.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And so, like, maybe that's the problem with all this, right? The things that Jalen Hurts does, I mean, it compounds upon compounds upon compounds of winning behavior. And that's why he's so good. But we're so poor at understanding that. And we just look at it as, okay, you're stacking habits. No, you're multiplying habits. That's the difference. I believe in it. I think that's what I did. I get it. But most people, I think, have a difficult time wrapping their arms around it.
I completely agree. Like, I understand this conceptually, right? Like, this makes sense to me. However, when this is you and you're in this shoes and you're the 15% grower, right? And there's people around you, your peers, that you're looking at and comparing yourself to, and they are the young, exciting, they have exponential growth. Like, the hard part, I think, is the patience, is my point. Like, to just trust, like, and this is the idea of like trusting the process kind of thing, like that I'm running my own race, and I'm comfortable with that. It's hard because you constantly want to compare yourself.
Okay. I agree with you guys. And Shane, I know I caught you on that point of like, hey, don't call it exponential because it's spiky. It's like it goes up and then it might not stay up, right? It will come down. So I feel you. Alex, there is something that's going through my head. So a couple of things. One, like I agree with you. I think we are bad at identifying like long-term compounding behaviors. Frankly, if you go back to aging, it also is in the bad way. It's like the opposite of the stairs every day is like the little piece of chocolate right before you go to bed or something, whatever it is. Like the problem is we kind of pick our heads up and like, oh man, we are either the beneficiary or the victim. I don't like the word victim, but like the victim of the compounding behaviors, either direction, right? Because they work in both ways. And Alex, I agree with you on the patience point of like, we just don't sometimes recognize it. What role do you think urgency plays? Okay. Because the thing that I feel like sometimes when people talk about being patient is it's an excuse to like not move fast enough.
Yeah.
And do you see what I'm saying? So like, I want to think about the tension there. Cause like sometimes when people say like, oh yeah, I'm a compounder, I'm like, no, you're just late. You're not doing enough. Like, let's go. And so how do you think about the right balance of urgency in there, and not being complacent?
I think that's a great distinction to make, right? Like patience doesn't mean you're not like, again, you're not doing anything. You're not just like fine with the status quo. There is a curiosity, there is a growth mindset. But I do think sometimes, if you OD on the sense of urgency, you're so sporadic, right? You're almost too emotional. Like I've been a part of places where like you freak out, right? I've been on teams that you lose and you freak out and you jump around and you then do these extreme things and like you never have an identity and you never have a process and you never make the small gains then because you're just like, you're hysterical almost, like you ride the roller coaster too much. And so I do think there's some patience mixed in this to make the adjustments that are needed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got a framework. Shane, Alex, tell me if you guys agree with this. What if the point is you need like the urgency, the right amount of urgency is the urgency that you can maintain for like a long time? Do you see what I'm saying? Because like if it's like sporadic urgency, it's like, well, no, come on, who cares? Because then you don't get the consistency of it. But it's like you should be urgent, but you got to be at some level of urgency that you think you could do all the time, right? Because like then it will compound and it'll continue. And I think that a lot of times the thing that frustrates me when I'm around someone is they don't have enough urgency. And I'm like, you're below the level that you could maintain for a long time. I went to the Laver Cup this past weekend, that was in Chase Center, the tennis. And like, I was thinking about it, like the ball boys and ball girls, they have like crazy urgency, right? Like you go see a ball boy or ball girl, they are moving their asses. You like can't be like that all the time. You can't like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's like too high. But there is some level of like, I don't know. I think it's Shane's thing of productive paranoia. It's like, if I don't get better, I almost think you kind of have to believe if you don't get better, people are going to catch up to you. Like there's a massive risk of inaction. I think that's the thing you got to believe.
I would agree with that. I think I was a very urgent player as I was trying to make it.
Yeah.
Just for that reason, Ravi. I was always afraid that there was someone out there like that's working harder. While I'm watching TV, someone's working like crap. Like, did I do enough? I was always worried. Did I do enough? Did I do enough? Did I do enough? Did I do it like today? Did I do enough today? Did I do enough this week? I don't know. So I better like just bust my ass to make sure that I did enough. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think the urgency is more backward facing than it is forward facing. At least it was for me. The urgency that I had was I was always scared I didn't do enough.
Yeah.
And so it propelled me to bust my tail today. So I didn't look at like, I got to be able to have urgency for the next year. That like burn out, right? Like I got to have urgency for the next 13 years of my NBA career. Like there's no friggin' way. Right. But if I was honest with myself about what I did yesterday or what I did in the summer to prepare for the upcoming season, there was a tension there. It's like, oh crap, man! Like, I hope I worked hard enough. And you don't really know until you're there. Right, Alex?
Totally.
You always hope that. So for me, I think the urgency is present to backwards looking versus forwards looking.
I think your idea of sustainable urgency is really interesting. When I think about the guys that end up having long careers, right? Like that at least on the athletic side, that play a long time. Again, if the urgency is so maxed out, you don't enjoy anything. You do not, like, you cease to enjoy any part of the process. And I think the guys that end up playing, at least in sports, again, 15, 20 years, they obviously they have a growth mindset. They're critical of themselves. However, like, you can't do it for that long if you don't. There has to be part of it as well. Like, I just think that, like, the off seasons, the training camps, the travel, Shane, like on the road again, you play the games, like, you're gonna lose quite often, right? And in the NFL, you get humbled routinely.
Let me ask you: was there ever a week you finished win, loss, draw, or a season that you finished and you said, you know what, I figured it out, I got it, I'm good?
No. Well,
I'm good.
Not.
I'm good. Oh man. We may have lost, but like I had it. I had it. I get it. I understand exactly what it is, and I'm good. I'm good to go. No, you are freaking. You're like shit. Like, yeah, we won, but we could have very easily lost, or we had a great year. Oh, we had plus turnovers. It could have been really bad, right? You are like constantly paranoid.
Let me fight with you guys, both of you, just for a minute, because I don't want. Hold on, Shane. Senior year at Duke, okay? You, player of the year, number one, before the Boozer injury, okay? In my brain, you're like seeing the Matrix there. It's like, no, I'm not paranoid. I'm like, no, we got in my brain, I'm envisioning you being like, no, I'm like a basketball sensei. Like, I've done this. I'm a senior. I'm like I get it. And Alex, same thing for you as a senior at Utah. I'm in my brain, I'm sort of envisioning you being like, no, man, I'm pulling these strings. I am not getting the strings pulled on me. And then what I thought was that it changes once you go to the pros, and then all of a sudden everything's different. But I would have thought there are moments in your life where you're kind of like, I am seeing the Matrix here. I am, like, you guys are Neo in this picture. Does that not happen when you, like, you know what I'm saying? Take like your senior year of college.
Yeah.
Like, was that there?
I would say, and I call this, like, I like this term for music artists. It's called your Imperial period. Okay. Your Imperial period as an artist is when your commercial success matches your critical success. Okay. And the critics are like, man, this album is a banger. Okay. And the Gen Pop is like, yes, this is the number one album. Now, there are times when, like, you're critically acclaimed, but your album doesn't sell. Right. And there's times when your album sells where the critics are like, this is shit. You're and it's a finite period. You do not go in and out of your Imperial period. It's a finite period. So 1970 to 1976, Elton John. Okay. That is his Imperial period.
That is what you came up with. You are old. Holy shit.
How many
Honky Chateau.
Jesus,
don't shoot me. I'm only the piano player. Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road. I mean, banger.
There are like 5 listeners that know what the fuck you're talking about.
Like, what, you couldn't have dropped like Jay-Z, Blueprint? Like, you're talking Elton John in 1970, dude. Like, how do you even know?
It was a 6-year period. That's why it's impressive. Okay, that's a long Imperial period. Okay, yeah. Jay-Z Blue Album, 100%. All right, Notorious B.I.G. Ready to Die, 100%. Okay, I'm aging myself there.
Imperial period.
So Imperial period, where your superpowers match up with everything.
On that anecdote, you're correct, Ravi. Like, my Imperial period would have been my last year of college, right? Like, I mean, I was in control. I was, like, insanely confident. Then there is this looming jump to the NFL, in which I played 16 years. I never won it all, though. Like, do you know what I'm saying? And like, you're always and never talked about, right? Like, the top of your position. And, for me, like, obviously kind of always following in that second tier at best, and never won the whole thing. right? So like, I do flip this on you, Shane. When you won the championships with the Heat at the end of the year, was there not a little bit of this feeling like?
But do tell us about your Imperial period, because I had guessed at where it was, but do tell us where it did show up, and then answer Alex's questions too.
And put some money in the fine jar for your Elton John reference. By the way,
you know what? Shout out Elton John. All right, I'm gonna get him on the show, and you're gonna say that to him. Okay.
If you get Elton John on the show, we will apologize to him directly.
I got that term from a music podcast, so that's why it's on my mind. Like in the definition of Imperial period, they use Elton John. That's why
you are a Renaissance man. I mean, that's just a fact. You're a fact. It's fact.
Well, Alex, the answer is no. When we won championships with the Miami Heat the first time, first of all, they lost to Dallas the year before, so you understand how fragile championships are. The next year, we're in the playoffs. Chris Bosh goes down, and they have to start me at the starting power forward position. Okay. And so, it worked out. But no one was super confident that this is the answer. Batty power forward to lead us to the title. It worked out well, really well. But
hell yeah.
But no one was confident in the time. It wasn't like, oh yeah, this is a no-brainer. Like, put Batty at the power forward position, 30 pounds undersized. And then the next year, it's the Ray Allen shot. So after every championship, there was never oh yeah, this is a no-doubter. It was very fragile, and it was always tenuous. And then, Ravi, in 2001, same thing. I had battle scars from 1999 when we lost to UConn, when we were supposed to be a historic team. And so I've always respected to be a champion. It's not, you never think you have it. Okay. Never. So my Imperial period as a player was 2008, 2009. Okay. That is when I was at my peak physically. So I'm 30 years old, 29, 30. Okay. I can still move. I can still jump. Okay. And that's when I went to Houston and I learned data analytics and how to be a Moneyball defender. Okay. So I had the knowledge and I had the athleticism. Okay. And the experience. And I could put those all three together. And not that I was stopping guys, but I felt like when I stepped on the floor, I could put guys in a position where they weren't going to be their best, because I could do that physically and I could do that mentally. And so for a 2-year period, I made second team all defense. I should have made first team, but that's neither here nor there. It cost me $100,000 in incentive bonuses, but I'm not bitter. The media votes on that, not the coaches. No, the coaches vote on that, not the media. But at that point, I felt, at least defensively, I felt like I saw the Matrix.
This is fucking insane. I'm saying this, but my initial aging thing, right? Especially as it related to your professional career, is kind of this idea is when you're past, I guess, your Imperial period, right? And dealing with that.
Yes.
When you're Elton John in 1977, that's what you were thinking.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Either you have slowed in sports, your body physically slows down. You just no longer have the ability you once had. But professionally, and this is the interesting thing that in most professional careers, actually, you're not impaired, from an ability standpoint, but even whether perceived and or, to your point, Ravi, out of the know, how do you deal with that? That's hard.
Mortality. You see your mortality. You see your professional mortality.
Decline. Yeah.
And you have to be honest with yourself that, like Toby Keith, I'm not as good as I once was. I could be good once as I ever was. Right. Ravi, speak about that in business, being honest with yourself when you are past your Imperial prime. And do you believe that translates to the C-suite? Is there an Imperial period for an executive where they are at the top of their game? And is that a finite period? And how long would that be? I know it varies for everybody, but what would be an appropriate Imperial period for somebody? And when and where does that come?
Yes, for sure it exists. And I think in business, I would just give you an example of there was probably a 5 or 10 year period where John Doerr, who is the guy who ran Kleiner Perkins for a long time, he invested in Google and Amazon. I mean, it's just what are we talking about? Doug Leone, Mike Moritz, some of these guys, just crazy periods where it's just a streak that is it's ridiculous. And so, yes, it definitely happens. I will tell you guys, and then Shane, I'll answer your point on executives, whatever. But like, I'll tell you, like, so much of when you guys are talking, I can identify to myself of like the benefit and the curse of being in business rather than sports is like you don't have the aging of the body, and so it's just about like how committed are you to avoiding, becoming irrelevant. Like I'm like, I don't want to be irrelevant right now, so I have to go and learn a bunch of new stuff because otherwise my professional mortality is like right in front of me. And instead I'm like, no, forget that, I'm not going to do that, and therefore I need to like go learn stuff, I need to do stuff, I need to go.
But don't you think there's an energy level associated with that, though?
Yes.
So like you have a willingness and you have the energy to do it, and a drive. Okay.
Yes.
The second you don't have that.
Yes. The moment you don't have the burning desire to compete, it's over because somebody else does. Like, our field is not the same as your field where you're like physically on it and getting, pancaked if you don't play, but you'll lose. You know what I'm saying? Like, every time you go face the field, like you will lose. In my business, if you like all of a sudden like don't keep going, and so you need the energy and the drive to go. So Shane, I agree with you. Like the way it shows up for executives or other people is they start trading on their past. Do you see what I'm saying? They start trying to trade on their name rather than trading on their content. And that just like gets stale really, really, really quickly. Now, it doesn't get stale as quickly as it does in sports. This is why sports are so cool, that you literally can't trade on your name at all. Like if you go on the floor and you're not good, you go on the field and you're not good. Like nobody gives you any grace. Like there is still some like extraction of the reservoir. You know what I'm saying? You can like pull from the reservoir in business for some period of time, but it doesn't last for very long. And I agree with you. Like the thing that the limiting factor is energy, Shane. It's just not as physical. Like for you guys, even if you have the energy, your body breaks down. Like, for us, if you can maintain the energy, you can go for a really long time. And it's not a physical thing.
The aging part's fucking hard physically. Like when you're an athlete, right? It is. You want to talk about an athlete's ego. Like when I was 21 years old, there wasn't a throw on the planet that I didn't feel like I could make. Like I felt I could do anything and everything. I mean, I was like, peak powers. And you fast forward and again, obviously the step up in talent and things, and like it is humbling to like all of a sudden like tell your coach like I don't think I can make that throw, or like tell yourself that.
That's
like I don't think you like, and then but there is like growth there because you do have to tweak, right? Like again, you got to play differently. Like I got to throw balls earlier, I got to play with more anticipation, I got to get the ball out quicker, a step ahead. But then on the flip side of that, you just said it, different than business. Like, you toe the line once a week in football. And so there is a grade, right? Like there's an evaluation that everybody sees. And so you can fight back. And like, there was a lot of gratitude at the very end of my career, especially when I came back from my injury, like, fuck you bitches, I can still play. You know what I'm saying?
Totally,
like, you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Like the last, like, I got half a leg, man. And I can still go out here and win games, and and like it looks a whole lot different. But like there was like a final, I guess the don't go quietly into the good night kind of
totally, dude,
moment. Ravi, have you had your Imperial period?
I'm going to answer your question, Alex. Shane, what you reminded me of one time, you said you went from underrated to like rated to overrated at some point. I think you had mentioned, right?
Yes.
And so I guess like maybe in that vein, Alex, like I've definitely not had an Imperial period. There's nothing I've done that's like accomplished that. But I guess what I'd say is I think that when I was at Instacart, I think I was doing a good job. And I think that whatever my little world was aware that I was doing a good job. Do you see what I'm saying? And it was like, I was like doing a good job, and it was known that I was doing a good job. And so I don't know. I think that's probably some like analogy to this. Yeah. I think the thing that I will tell you is that like, this guy, Brett Taylor, I find to be very inspiring on this dimension, which is like, this guy has had a crazy career, right? Like helped co-found Google Maps, then like went and founded a company. That company gets bought by Facebook. He becomes the CTO of Facebook when they go public. He then founds another company. He gets bought by Salesforce, becomes the co-CEO of Salesforce, and now is the chairman of OpenAI and the founder of Sierra, which is another company that he founded with Clay Bavor, and they're like crushing. It's an amazing company. But like you look at that background, it's like product guy, engineer, founder, sales guy, CEO, chairman, like, but he's like our age and he's still like doing new stuff. And the thing that he says, which will take me to the question that you'd asked, which I think about a lot, is he's like, I don't want to be an ossified version of my old self. I don't want to be like the way he's like, what I was in the past was I was like an engineer and people are like, oh, like, cool, that's what you're going to be. And he's like, no, I want to like learn sales. Oh, you're a founder. You're not like at a bigger company. No, I don't want to just be a founder. I want to learn how to do it at a big company. Oh, okay, cool. Now you're a big company again. No. I want to go and learn how to be a founder again in the new world. And he just sort of like keeps learning. Like the thing about him is despite like he has the ability now, if he wants to like be on 6 boards, have everyone look at his career and be like, this was amazing and kind of like coast. And he's like, no, like I want to keep learning. And I have found that I'm like nowhere near this guy at all, but I find that to be pretty inspirational because he's like has new stories to tell.
Let me ask you this on that. Is his sense of urgency like at a 12?
Great question. You know, what's amazing, Alex, is I think what he has that's good, and it reminds me of you guys, honestly, I think he has capacity to maintain a higher level of urgency than many people. But no, it's not like he's working till 3 a.m. every day. But what he might do is in the time where he's at work, he might do 12 sales calls in a row, which is a lot. Like that is a lot to like be able to kind of get in the morning and do 12 meetings in a row that are like selling his product. And a lot of other people would get fatigued with that, you know, but I would say the consistent sense of urgency he can maintain is pretty high, but it is more sustainable. Like he's a great dad. He has 3 kids. He like, you know, he like gets in early and goes home like at a normal time. But I think that what he's probably unique at is like having success not change his sense of urgency. Do you see what I'm saying? Like he has been able to like keep going despite like having enough money and having enough respect, you know, out there, but he like still codes. And I think that him still coding is like staying close to the metal, you know? But I think he's a very unique person in like our game, you know, like somebody who feels that paranoia and feels that aggression still is unique. And he deserves to be treated differently because he is unique. But I find that to be very inspirational. One thing I find, I'll tell you, like selfishly, the people I like being around have like interesting stories to tell, right? They like, but that means they have new experiences that create interesting stories, you know? And I think like part of our job to be like interesting to our friends and interesting to our kids and interesting to our spouses is like keep having interesting experiences so you can keep having interesting stories. You know what I'm saying? Because otherwise, if you're just telling the same ones from forever ago, you know, people kind of like, you're I don't know, eating from the same bowl of ice cream.
Ravi, you're completely shitting on my entire business model as a corporate speaker now.
Shane,
this is all I have anymore, Ravi. People do not sign me up to say, "Hey, Shane, tell us how you learned how to code using Claude Code."
No, I disagree with you.
No one cares. No one cares. They want to hear. Tell me about LeBron. Tell me about Coach K.
No. Hold on. I'm gonna fight with you here. Okay, I'm gonna fight with you again. I agree that you have a greatest hits album. That is a really good album. Okay, you have a great like Game 7 of the NBA Finals, playing the fade. You know, like in that moment, I knew what it was all about. Like those, that's a good greatest hits. However, I would say I think that people like hearing about your new experiences too. You know, I like hearing about you taking Zeke for a
Shane,
college.
when you go see Elton John, Shane, when you go see Elton John in concert, do you want to hear his new shit or do you want to hear Tiny Dancer and Rocket Man?
I want to hear Tiny Dancer. I want to hear Rocket Man. You know, I actually don't look at my career now. And you talk about urgency. Thinking about this, like. I have an anxiety and an urgency. I just turned 47. All right. So I'm closer to 50. Right. than you dudes here. And so there's something about that number. All right. And I feel great. I don't feel 47. I feel 26. I still act like a
You're the
26-year-old
pretty girl
sometimes.
now. Man. You look great.
Yeah. Right. But I do feel an urgency to like, okay, what am I about? And what, and people who are older than me, like, oh, you're still a puppy. But like, there's an urgency to continue to learn, but put my stuff out there in the world to help other people, whether it's through corporate speaking or books or this podcast. And it's real. And the way I look at my career and the experiences that I have, look, it's every time I go to do a corporate speech, I get the same questions. How do I deal with young people? Young people are entitled. How do I deal with young people? Right. And it's the same thing that they were saying about young people 30 years ago. Well, how do I reach the younger generation? Right. I'm a first time manager. How do I think about leadership? Right. How do I find balance? How do I climb the corporate? So these themes are timeless. They're just packaged in a different way, I guess you could say. And so I look at my stories as applicable today as they will be 30 years from now, because you're dealing with people. And so that's the fun part for me, is figuring out, okay, how do I explain this in a way that's has modern context?
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me fresh. And that's what motivates me to keep on going and learning and find different ways to communicate and connect with folks. So I say that half jest. So I know that I have a greatest hits album, and I use those stories a lot. They're good stories, but finding the ways that they're applicable today to today's problem society, that's the challenge and the fun part.
It also, Shane, it's so funny that you like made the joke, because I was like, you were like actually playing around with the AI tools yourself. You are the one who was always like, hey guys, I like plugged in our podcast into this thing and here's what it's saying. Like half the time we don't know if we're talking to you or the Shane bot that you create. And so like, I don't know, you're like a tinkerer by nature, I feel like. And like, I always joke that, Alex, I don't know if I told you this, but Shane truly sometimes will tell me about AI products before I've heard of them. And it's like my job. But anyway, I do think that, like, listen, I think that you guys talked about it for professional stuff. I think about this for personal stuff too.
Well, I was just going to say this is the most important distinction on this note with Shane, and like these things, and even these, you're talking about living life, Ravi, and like having new stories to tell. They don't have to be like professional notches in the belt.
No.
They don't have to be new watermarks. And I think this is the great dilemma for anybody our age, especially when you have kids, because certainly I would hope that a big part of what you're, again, like solving for is being a parent, which is freaking so challenging. Those two things don't coexist well, right? Like having all these professional accomplishments and I think being a super present parent. And so it is an interesting stage of life.
How do you think about aging now? All right, take our careers out of this. How do you picture aging? How do you think about it?
I get opportunities, right? Like obviously the opportunity to be on TV and talk about football. I get opportunities that come my way because of my career, because of my overcoming my leg injury. And there's like this fear when these opportunities come my way that I have to say yes, because that spigot's going to get turned off at some point, right? Like that, I think it's going to end. And so I say yes and to way too many freaking things. And it's like, well, what's really important right now, again, like I've got a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old. My 14-year-old starting high school is going to be gone in, 3.5 years. And it's like, what is really more important? And like this whole idea of ego involved in this, that I need to say yes to these things because I need to feel valued, professionally. And I don't want to, I think I have more in me. Right. But like, is that even the most important thing right now? How do can I do both? Which is like what I constantly say, well, I'll just make it work. It's just not true though. Right. Like I've definitely, it's just not.
Well, Shane, what do you think? I have lots of thoughts on this.
In terms of aging, the most important thing is feeling physically fit. Once your body goes, Alex, this, everything else is just academic. My dad was an amazing role model in a lot of ways, but he was the maybe the worst health role model that I had. Okay. And he blessed me with all the good genes, the high cholesterol, the glucose, you name it. All right. He suffered from everything. So when I go to the doctor, it's, family history, it's yes, 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 yes. So I know I've been dealt the hand that I've been dealt. And so, and at the end of his life, he struggled. And, if you'd asked him and he was capacitated enough, he'd have said, I'm a burden on everybody. And I'm sorry, but like he was at a point where he couldn't even communicate that for years on end. So that has been like one of the most impactful things to watch my family around that, watch my mom around that, watch my dad around that. And like, I don't want to be that burden on anybody. Right. So as I think about aging, it's reading Peter Attia's book right behind me.
Yeah. Was it Outlive? Yeah.
Outlive. It really changed my mind on how I thought about health and wellness, and the theory of I want to feel as good as I can for as long as I can, and have a demise at the end as short as possible. And so that's my goal. Everything else is gravy. So I just want to feel good for as long as I can and go quick at the end and not be a burden on anybody and enjoy what I've created for the next, hopefully, 40 years. That'd be a success.
You're such a geezer. Like, it is such the right answer, Shane. That is the right answer.
This guy
However,
was talking about
how many people our age would have given that answer, right?
Dude,
like that being grateful for your health and optimizing for your health is really more important, because it is. But like,
dude, this is why, like, Alex, I think, remember Shane started by being like, I've always been the old guy. It's like, I didn't know we had an 80-year-old on our podcast, rather than a 47-year-old.
That is not how
I feel either.
Not
like,
on my brain.
Top. No.
Yeah.
My brain is not there.
Something happens in the mid 40s. And, I'd be curious to get the comments from our listenership that something just clicks when you're 30, 46, something about that number when your mindset changes. And so trust me, I was once where you were, and I drank a ton of beer and I, worked hard and, just, I'm going to do this forever. And, you gain perspective when you get a little older, boys. You gain perspective.
I'm glad we have you, Shane. I'm glad we have the elder statesman here. Alex, on your point on sort of like the stories that can be told and then not being just professional, I think that is a hugely important thing that I think about all the time. And in fact, a lot of the things that I find interesting when I hear stories now are not professional, like war stories or war stories, so to speak. They are life stories, right? They are the things about what people are doing with their kids, what people are doing with their parents. Like, frankly, like even like sometimes like, stuff in the community, whatever it might be, but it's sort of like, I think my point is not that you have to go have professional experiences that are new and interesting. I do think you have to have life experiences that are new and interesting. Like, I like one of the things, Shane, that I think you and Heidi do a good job of is like, you guys seem to go do fun stuff, like, hey, I'm surprising Heidi and going to Oasis. Like, I think that kind of stuff is good. Like, you got to like go and do new things and just like go and, you know what I'm saying? Like, try stuff. And I think we think about compounding. Think about relationship with your spouse. Of all the things that are going to compound, assume we all hope to be married for 50 years plus, that compounding matters. And then the thing about the kids, Alex, I'll tell you the flip of this. I think I'm like really present and good about being around, right? Yep. And the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I was traveling and I was gone for like, a couple of days. And I came back and I was feeling like, man, I missed you guys. And I was talking to Shrey. I was like, hey, did you miss me? And he laughed and he's like, of course, Dad, but you were only gone for like a day, and like, and instead of feeling bad, I was actually like pretty happy, right? Which is like, dude, like all these things sometimes we go through in our heads on like, I gotta be present, I gotta be around. Like, it's just like, he was just like, I saw you that morning. You like left in the evening and like, I don't see you in the evening sometimes anyway, because like I have soccer or you have a dinner or whatever, right? Then you were gone the next day and then you came back like, and you like got back in time for our flag football game. Like, yeah, like of course I missed you, but like it wasn't that big of a deal. And I think that was like good and freeing for me too, which is like being present doesn't mean being ever present, or omnipresent. It means like being available. And that was like I think about that for you because I think some of the stuff you end up having to do is travel oriented.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that like those decisions are their own things, but like it was helpful for me because I'm so anti-travel that like honestly his reaction of just like chill out dad was actually pretty like good for me.
Obviously anybody that travels that has kids, like the feeling of disconnection,
Yeah.
you know, and that you're missing out and the FOMO, like it can be a lot for sure. I definitely battle it at times, like when the travel mounts, you know.
But that's why I like for instance, Shane, even before you were coaching, the idea of like I don't travel during basketball season. I thought that was like a good way to deal with it of like, it's not that you don't travel. It's not that you don't do a bunch of stuff. You have like a certain rule that you follow for some period of time. And I actually liked that a lot because all of a sudden it's like the Clay Christensen thing. It's easier to follow a rule 100% of the time than 98% of the time. It's just an easier answer. Like, oh, I just don't go during that period.
Yeah.
You know, and so there are like sustainable, that to me is part of like the sustainable urgency for home. It's like, look, I'm not going to not go ever. But, you know, for this period of time, I'm kind of homebound. I think that's, you know, interesting. I like that.
Wise. It's wise. Why didn't you? I do remember you just went and saw Oasis. Why the fuck did you not use them as your music example? I mean, it would have been 1,000 times better.
Because I don't know if people have, you know, the great music tastes of Oasis. And so I didn't want to say what's the story Morning Glory out there. Which is
I feel like that might have been their Imperial period.
9% of our listeners, I bet, know Oasis, know that album, which was phenomenal, and are familiar with it. And then obviously, then they've kind of gone
Alex,
into
to your point is Shane. It's like, oh yeah, from 70 to 76, Elton John. This dude was born in 1978. Like, and he's just like talking about it as if it was like, you know, him like in the living room on the record player. He wasn't even alive. Like, what are we talking about?
Next show, we should just talk about Imperial periods. Okay, I want to see what you guys come up with. True Imperial periods of greatness, creativity, and creation.
I do think the new concept. I do like that. I do like the concept of the Imperial period.
This idea of like steady growth, compounding growth, and how sustainable that is, and actually the power of it. Right. And like that mindset, because there is this like sense of urgency, I think, for all of us to get tricked into like, we need to have this Imperial period. Like we need to be in that moment. We need to be like, because of the peak value in it. Yeah. Does that make sense? But like, that's not actually what you should be solving for. Right. Like that is like other people's opinion. What you should really be solving for is this like consistent growth, sustainable growth. And like, but for me, I guess as like I'm like turning this inward, it is like the patience to have that.
I was thinking of two things when you were talking. One, I think, is actually like the genius of Coach K's next play, because it's not like next play. It's not yesterday's play. It's just one play. Just go and have the good next play. Right? Like that's the thing. And if you do think about that, that is about consistent growth. That is about like, you know, smaller goals. It really is like just kind of, that's the thing, right? Just like the next play should be a good one. And it's just so much more approachable. I think like, I think about this for you, Shane, of like you waking up in the morning and doing like your breathing or journaling or the things that you can do. It's like a more approachable of like, okay, I'm going to do this tomorrow. You know, and then after that, I'm gonna like figure out the next day. But I think that is one big thing. The second thing, Alex, I was thinking about your point of like, you know, all of us that take certain opportunities that we're not sure we want just because they feel like they're fleeting, right? Yeah. And it's like, oh God, what if they're not available later? There are some people that I've met, and I don't think this is a typical thing, but there are some people I've met who are more mentally peaceful on that because they have some belief that they can like create their own relevance and opportunities when they want. Yeah. And I guess like one thing I would say for you is like, it strikes me that the things that people want to talk to you about are stuff that is evergreen, same way Shane was talking about in nature. And so again, it's easy to be sanguine about someone else's stuff, right? But I do think that like, I don't think that the opportunities you have are fleeting. I think they would get like recreated whenever you want. And I find this too. I worry that the opportunities I get are fleeting. Oh my God, what if you know, it's because I'm at this age and this, you know, professional situation. Like, you know, if I don't do it now, when will it be available? But I admire sometimes the people, and I think they're correct when they sort of like have the view of like, if I need to create these opportunities again, I can. There's a lot fewer like once in a lifetime things
for sure. And,
know?
and probably more at peace with like, listen, another opportunity will come.
Yes.
You know, and it's like not
Yes.
this FOMO where it's like, what if I don't take this meeting? What if this is the one
Totally.
Opportunity that I turned down and it was going to be something, kind of thing. Totally.
Yeah. And you could never advise any of our kids to feel that way.
Easier to say, harder to execute.
For sure. I think one of the biggest things about aging that I think is a good thing, and this is, the geezer's paradox, Alex, that you mentioned many, many, many episodes ago, right?
Yeah.
But it's sort of like getting into like the old person mindset sooner about like only caring about what actually matters, right? Like
our good friend Shane here.
Yeah. Shane is really on to like, the only thing that matters is your health and not being a burden. I'm not sure I'm there, but like what I would say is like, ideally like caring more about the opinions of fewer people, that feels like a good thing that comes with aging, right?
Hell
of like, okay, whose opinion do I care about? I care about my own opinion of myself, and I care about a very select few people's opinions, I think that is like a good thing that comes along with aging, is like good perspective on whose opinion should you care about.
Totally. Yeah. Hell yes.
Yeah. You spend less time worrying about what you say. You just say it.
Yeah. You just toss out examples that your friends can make fun of, like no problem.
Yeah, totally. Just don't give a shit.
I know. I really don't.
Yeah, no, I know that. I know. The only thing is, it's funny, Shane, because like in the time I've known you, and I think this speaks to your like you've always been like the mature one. You've sort of always seemed a little bit more like that than I think a lot of other people, and maybe that's just on a relative basis. You've always seemed like you're a little bit more mature. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so it might not be that you're the same as you are now, but I've always observed you to like kind of just say whatever you say, like it doesn't feel new to me that you're like that.
Oh, well, I was lucky to play in the Twitter era. So there's nothing that you guys can say to me that I haven't heard on Twitter already, and or X, whatever they call it now. And so you develop a thick skin being a professional athlete, especially these days. And so authenticity is much more important. And that's the lesson I had to learn late. Authenticity is much more important than the opinions of others.
I do think another thing that happens as you get older is you realize that there are some cliches that are like cliches for a reason, because they're just right. They're just correct, and there are things that you used to hear and be like, oh, come on, that's just the old folks saying it. But like, they just turn out to be true, like the most important decision is the person you decide to marry. You like intellectually know that, but then like it actually mathematically ends up being true of like, think about how much time you spend with this person, how much influence they have on you. Oh, like professionally, like you got to do all this stuff, but like what really matters is the friends you make along the way. You hear that and you're just like, wow. And then later you're like, oh wait, that's true. There's like all these things that turn out to be true that like sound so ridiculous, Like Alex, I don't know, whenever we spend time with George Roberts, like he'll always be like, yeah, the only thing that really matters is the people that you surround yourself with. And your first reaction when you hear that as a young person is like, yeah, but you're so successful already. Like, you're just
exactly.
saying that, Exactly. And then later you're like, oh wait, no, he's right.